What if one of Hollywood's most famously private stars left behind a secret that could change how we see her forever? Barbara Stanwyck was a legend, a tough, independent force of nature on the silver screen who played by her own rules. She was known for her ferocious privacy, leaving behind no tell-all interviews and, most importantly, no autobiography. When she died, her secrets seemingly died with her, but what if they didn't? Imagine, just for a moment, that in a dusty trunk in some forgotten corner of Hollywood, a discovery was made: the private, handwritten journals of Barbara Stanwyck. It's a film historian's fantasy, because no such journals have ever been found. But if they were, what stories would they tell? Rumors have always swirled around Stanwyck, and one of the most persistent is that of a scandalous, all-consuming affair with a man she only described as massive. Today, we're going on a speculative journey, using the known facts of her life to imagine what might have been written in those pages and to uncover the truth behind the kind of man who could have captivated one of Hollywood's greatest. To even imagine what might be in those hypothetical journals, you have to understand the woman. To the world, Barbara Stanwyck was indestructible. She was the ultimate survivor, an actress whose career was forged in a childhood that would have broken most people. Born Ruby Catherine Stevens in 1907, her life started with staggering loss. When Ruby was just 4, her mother was tragically killed, pushed from a moving streetcar. A few weeks later, her father abandoned his children to work on the Panama Canal, and was never seen again. Orphaned and adrift, Ruby and her brother were sent into foster care, a cold system that taught her a lesson she'd carry for life: the only person you can truly rely on is yourself. This wasn't just a philosophy. It was a survival mechanism. It created a fierce independence and a deep mistrust of being vulnerable. She started working at 13, wrapping packages at a department store, a universe away from the glamour that would later define her. But that spark was there. By 15, she was a chorus girl, dancing on Broadway, a Ziegfeld girl with an ambition that burned hotter than the stage lights. It was here she shed the skin of Ruby Stevens and became Barbara Stanwyck. The name change was a total reinvention, the creation of a persona, a shield. Barbara Stanwyck could take the hits in a way the orphaned Ruby Stevens never could. Her Broadway success eventually got Hollywood's attention, but the move wasn't seamless. At first, her raw, natural style clashed with the polished performances of the time. But legendary director Frank Capra saw the fire and authenticity simmering just beneath the surface. He cast her in Ladies of Leisure in 1930, and a star was born. Capra would later call her the greatest emotional actress the screen has yet known, a feeling shared by critics and audiences for decades. Over a career spanning nearly 4 decades and more than 80 films, she proved him right again and again. She could be heartbreaking in Stella Dallas, hilarious in The Lady Eve, and absolutely bone-chilling as the ultimate femme fatale in Double Indemnity. She wasn't just playing roles, she was drawing from that deep well of early pain and turning it into cinematic gold. Her public life was all about professionalism. She was always prepared, always knew her lines, and famously did her own stunts. Crews loved her, nicknaming her Missy out of respect and affection. But her private life stayed private. She built walls around herself that were unshakable. Her first marriage, to vaudeville star Frank Fay, was famously rocky. His jealousy and alcoholism are rumored to be one of the inspirations for the film A Star is Born. They adopted a son, Dion, but their relationship was always difficult. Her second marriage, to the impossibly handsome Robert Taylor, looked like a Hollywood fairy tale. But underneath, it was complicated. Stanwyck was the driving force, the more established star. When they divorced after 12 years, she was reportedly devastated and never truly got over him. When Taylor died in 1969, she was too grief-stricken to even attend his funeral. This was the image she protected her entire life: the tough broad, the consummate professional, the survivor who needed no one. When she passed away in 1990, the world believed her inner life had gone with her. No one could have predicted the fascinating, what-if, scenarios that would continue to fuel her legend for decades to come. So, let's indulge in a bit of historical fantasy. The story of a discovery like this would sound like something from a movie. For decades after her death, the full truth of Barbara Stanwyck's inner world remained a mystery. Biographers lamented the lack of personal records. She was a woman who lived on camera, yet left almost no paper trail. But imagine this, it's the spring of 2024. A small, unassuming bungalow Stanwyck had secretly owned is being cleared out. The new owners, in the attic, find a heavy, locked trunk. Prying it open, they find it filled not with costumes, but with dozens of cloth-bound journals, filled with the elegant cursive of Barbara Stanwyck. Of course, this never happened. But if it had, the journals would have been a historical bombshell. They would offer a raw, unfiltered look into the heart of a woman who was forced to be tough but longed to be vulnerable. She might have written about the pain of her childhood, her complicated feelings for her son, and her heartbreak over Robert Taylor. It would be an unprecedented look into the golden age of Hollywood, but buried within these imaginary pages, a story so secret, so scandalous, might exist that it would change everything. A narrative, spanning multiple journals, of a long-running, clandestine affair with a man of immense power. A man she never once names. A man she refers to only by a series of cryptic titles. And a man she describes with one, startling adjective, massive. This kind of revelation wouldn't just add a new chapter to her life, it would force us to rewrite the whole book. If we could read these fictional entries, it would be like listening to a private confession. Stanwyck's tough exterior would dissolve on the page, replaced by a woman utterly captivated. The affair, it would seem, spanned years, a hidden current running beneath her public life, including during her marriage to Robert Taylor. She wouldn't identify him by name, a calculated act of protection. Instead, she might use mythic code names. Sometimes she'd call him the architect, a reference to his role in building not just companies, but empires within Hollywood. In other entries, he's the sovereign, a man who answered to no one. Her first mention of him might appear in a journal from the late 1930s. Asterisk, met the architect today. It was not a meeting of equals. When he enters a room, the air changes. The gravity shifts. It is not just power, it is presence. It is total. Asterisk, this awe could have quickly deepened. Her journal entries might become more feverish, filled with a mix of exhilaration and dread, describing secret meetings in remote locations. One of the most revealing passages would be where she first uses that description: he is simply massive. It is the only word. It is not about height or bulk. It is about the space he occupies, physically and spiritually. His hands, his voice, the weight of his gaze, everything about him is on a scale that dwarfs other men. To be in his presence is to feel both completely safe and utterly in peril. He has an intellect that cuts through artifice and a will that bends the world to his liking. He has built an empire from nothing, just as I have. Perhaps that is what I see in him. The same hunger. The same unbreakable core. Asterisk, this description is striking. It speaks to his influence, his power, his larger-than-life status. This was no movie star, this was a titan of industry. The entries would paint a picture of a relationship that was intellectually stimulating and intensely passionate. He sees the world not as it is, but as a series of levers to be pulled, she might have written. Asterisk, he is the only man I have ever met whose mind moves as quickly as my own. He does not flatter me, he challenges me. Asterisk, but she would also write of the torment. The affair was a secret she had to guard constantly, a source of profound guilt, especially during her marriage. To walk away from the sovereign would be like walking away from the sun, one heartbreaking entry might read. Asterisk, I would be cold for the rest of my days. This love is a magnificent poison. I know it could be my ruin. But in his arms, I feel more alive than I ever have on any movie set. While she was on screen playing women who took incredible risks, in this imagined private life, she was living a reality that was just as dangerous. The idea of these journals doesn't just introduce us to a new lover, it introduces us to a new Barbara Stanwyck, a woman driven by a passion so immense it forced her to risk everything. That if these journals existed, the million-dollar question would be, who was this massive man? The pages would provide no name, but they might offer clues, biographical breadcrumbs that allow us to piece together a profile. Let's play detective with our hypothetical evidence. Stanwyck repeatedly calls him the architect. One passage might read, he spoke tonight of his vision for the desert. Not just a town, but a new kind of oasis, built on ambition and luxury. This points to a man involved in real estate, development, or even the construction of Hollywood's infrastructure. This speaks to power. He wasn't just rich, he was a king in his own court. Stanwyck might write, he moves pieces on the board that other men don't even know exist. This suggests a studio head or a mogul with deep connections. In several entries, Stanwyck might mention his passion for aviation. He feels more at home in the sky than on the ground, she might write. He speaks of the mechanics of flight with the same passion he speaks of a beautiful woman. This is a very specific clue, she could make it clear he wasn't a public figure like an actor. He owns the circus but has no desire to be one of the clowns. This likely rules out her famous co-stars, the eccentric billionaire, aviator, and film producer fits many clues perfectly. He was obsessed with aviation and a developer with grand visions for Las Vegas, an oasis in the desert. As head of RKO Pictures, he was a Hollywood sovereign accountable to no one. He was also notoriously private, loathing the press. The description of a man who owns the circus but has no desire to be one of the clowns, is a perfect fit for Hughes. The tyrannical head of Columbia Pictures was the definition of a Hollywood sovereign. His power was absolute and his reputation was fearsome. Stanwyck made several films at Columbia, so they had extensive contact. He was an architect of a studio empire. However, the aviator clue doesn't fit Cohn as well. Also, Cohn's reputation was famously brutish. Stanwyck's entries describe an intellect she admired, which might not align with the notoriously crude Cohn. This is the most intriguing possibility. Capra discovered Stanwyck and launched her into stardom. Their professional collaboration was incredibly fruitful. He was an architect of stories, of cinematic language. He built her into a star. Their relationship was undeniably profound, and some biographers suggest he was infatuated with her. However, as a famous director, Capra was very much in the spotlight. Could the clues have been misdirection? Could the affair have grown from their intense creative partnership? The evidence from our imagined journals points most strongly towards a figure like Hughes, but the ghost of Capra lingers as a tantalizing possibility. The truth, in this speculative game, remains a puzzle left behind by one of Hollywood's most enigmatic stars. The idea of these journals does more than offer a fun mystery, it makes us look at her legacy through a new lens. For decades, her story was one of solitary strength. The narrative was clear, an orphan who pulled herself up, weathered 2 difficult marriages, and found her identity in her work. We saw her as an icon of independence. Hypothetical journals would shatter that simple image. They wouldn't diminish her strength, but they would reveal the vulnerability it was designed to protect. The woman who seemed allergic to sentiment on screen was, in this imagined private life, capable of a sweeping, all-consuming passion. Her famous professionalism might have been more than a work ethic, it might have been camouflage to keep a turbulent inner world from derailing her career. Think of the films she made. In Double Indemnity, 1944, she played a woman leading a secret life. If she were guarding a life-altering secret, How much of that real-life tension did she channel into that iconic performance? This new information would also recontextualize her marriages. Was her ability to withstand the difficult marriage to Frank Fay bolstered by a secret emotional sanctuary? And what of Robert Taylor? The public saw a Hollywood dream, but the journals would suggest a reality where that marriage coexisted with a more passionate, clandestine affair. Her undisputed grief at Taylor's death would become even more complex. Imagine the fallout if this had been revealed during Hollywood's golden age. It would have been a cataclysmic scandal. The industry's strict moral production code governed the perceived morality of its stars. An affair of this magnitude would have been career suicide. Her entire image of integrity would have been shattered. The secrecy wasn't just about privacy, it was about survival. Ultimately, this thought experiment gives us a more human, more flawed, and more fascinating Barbara Stanwyck. The icon is replaced by a woman of profound contradictions, strong yet vulnerable, disciplined yet passionate. She wasn't a one-dimensional, tough broad. She was a woman living a life of immense complexity, and that makes her genius all the more compelling. The idea of Barbara Stanwyck and her secret lover is one of the most compelling what-ifs in Hollywood history. The clues are all there in the shadows of her life, but the final answer remains a mystery. What do you think? Based on the evidence we have, who could this massive man have been? Was it the aviator Howard Hughes, the mogul Harry Cohn, or someone else entirely? Let us know your theories in the comments. And if you find these forgotten stories of classic Hollywood as fascinating as we do, make sure to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss another deep dive into the secrets of the silver screen. In the end, this journey into a set of imaginary journals leaves us with more questions than answers. It's a final, brilliant performance from a woman who mastered hiding in plain sight. For her entire career, she showed a strength and an unbreakable will. We admired her for the walls she built. But speculating about a secret door in that fortress reveals a world of passionate, dangerous love that makes her story even richer. The identity of the sovereign will always be a subject of debate. And maybe that's exactly how she would have wanted it. By keeping her inner life so private, she protected it. She became not just a star, but a legend, forever entwined with her own mysteries. What we know for sure is that the deep well of emotion we saw on screen was real. She was drawing from a life lived at the extremes of heartbreak and passion. Barbara Stanwyck's legacy as one of the finest actresses was already secure. But through this speculative lens, she emerges as something more, one of Hollywood's great enigmas, a woman whose biggest secret might have been a massive love she kept hidden from the world. A final, fascinating possibility, buried by time.